Hello, I'm Nan Geschke. I'm your host of the Los Altos History Show. This evening we have Carol Teft, the Los Altos Community Librarian. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Oh, I'm glad that you could join us this evening. Carol has been the managing librarian in Los Altos for 30 years, so you've seen a lot of changes,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes, I have.
What has been the biggest change, do you think?
I think the technology of the last 10 years is probably the most explosive change we've had, although I've seen things changing all along in the last 30-some years. But yes, the last 10 years, the explosion of technology, which has brought us more information and better ways of accessing it, I think that's been the big thing in our field.
I know about 3 months ago, I was able to be at the ribbon cutting ceremony for the beginning of the internet access for Los Altos patrons.
Yes.
And that was a very exciting day, I know, for the library and for Los Altos as well.
Yes.
I think that we should really be proud because Los Altos is the first county library to really provide access for all of its citizens. So
Yes.
I think we should really be proud of you and all the library staff for bringing that to Los Altos.
Thank you. We started well over a year ago with a state grant, and we started with one internet station, and we opened it up for training for the public, and we began a training program. And I guess we've trained over 500 people in the community on how to use and access internet. And now we've joined with the county in coming up fully on internet where you can dial in from home now. And that's all of the county libraries now are up on internet along with us. So it's very exciting.
Did you ever think that you'd be able to dial into your catalog, Carol?
No, it's just like a miracle, it really is. And it's given us such much better access, and at a time when people are looking for information, it's been wonderful, yeah.
Well, I think it's rather fitting that Los Altos was the first county library to provide internet access because it was the first branch library in Los Altos, wasn't it, Carol?
Yes, we were, yes.
And can you give us some background?
Well, it all started back in 1912 when there was a pressure to the Board of Supervisors to start a county library, and so in 1912 they did in fact do that, and they taxed everybody a penny per 100,000 estimated tax revenue, and then they began a county library, and the first branch was Los Altos, and that was in 1914.
Do you have any idea, Carol, why Los Altos was the first library to become the first branch?
Though it was a small community, there were a lot of people in Los Altos who were pressuring the Board of Supervisors, and I remember reading that one gentleman stood up and said, if you'll give us the first branch, we'll support your library, your county library. And so that really was the reason, because Los Altos had so many people interested in it.
Not much has changed, has it?
No, it's the same. People are still supporting our library and very, very supportive, yeah.
That's really fantastic that we have so much support in Los Altos.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about those early days. Who were the librarians? Where was the library? I know it wasn't at the Civic Center.
No, it started out actually in the land company, and
the Los Altos Land Company.
In the Los Altos Land Company, and a gentleman named C.E. Miner was the real estate man in that. building, and he offered to take care of the library for $5 a month.
$5 a month?
Good price, and good salary. And he kept the library open all day. Best hours they had for years and years, because he was there all the time, so he kept the library open. And Los Altos was selling land in those days, trying to develop itself into a city, so he needed to be open, and the library was open with him. Okay. So that worked out very nicely. And then through the years, they moved from, as they got bigger, they moved from one place to another. They were in the Scout Hall and shared that facility with a number of different community groups. The Scout Hall was used for lots of different...
That was on First Street?
On First Street, yes.
And that's no longer here, of course.
Right. And then I guess the first real library building was in 1936. The group of people got together, and their names like Copeland and the Guy Schaup and
very important Los Altos names.
Yes, and Reverend Landells and his wife, and they got together and began talking about couldn't they get a better facility for the library, and they found that there was a powerhouse, and it's where Safeway now is, up there on First Street, that was run by the Southern Pacific Railroad, and they were offered that powerhouse for $1 a year. Another good deal.
From the Schaup brothers?
Yes, from the
Guy and Paul Schaup,
right.
Isn't that right?
They were executives in the Southern Pacific Railroad. So as a result, they were able to affect this, and the county had to agree to not tax the building during that period of time. So it worked out. I
wonder how they were able to do that.
I don't know. They could do things like that in those days. But it worked out very nicely for everybody. But they needed to remodel it because it had been vacant for quite some time. And this was during the Depression, and a lot of railroad hobos and whatnot had jumped off and used this as a place to shelter. So they had a lot of remodeling to do, as they called it. And they all got together and voted to do this, and they needed to raise money. So the community sent letters out to everybody, and they raised $480, which was what their budget was to renovate.
$480?
Yes, to renovate
for the whole
building.
job?
Yes, except that they expected, they'd already gotten a promise from the government that the WPA would do the work, and they were also going to have the WPA was going to have the funds to pay for the paint. But at the last minute, the government didn't come through, so they sent another letter out, and they raised another $80 to pay for the paint. So the whole project was done for somewhat over $500.
That's remarkable.
Yes.
And what was your last remodel, Carol? How much did it cost?
The one that we did in 1994 was $3 million.
$3 million.
Yes. So that's how time changes. But we doubled our space for $3 million. So.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And it was a wonderful time. Everybody joined in and got out there and helped smooth the gravel down out in the yard there. And it was quite a community project. And when they opened the library, they had 4 tables, reading tables, and they had real shelves for the books. And so it was the first time that they had a real library. And it was in that powerhouse for a number of years.
That's really interesting. And I believe that Mrs. Landells, Reverend Landells' wife, was the librarian for a long time?
Yeah. Yes, she was. Yes.
Now, was she a librarian?
No. She was a willing volunteer, in essence. And that's the way libraries were run for many years, by people. They were often called custodians, and that's mostly what they were. They were the custodians of the books, and it was their charge to be sure that they had good records as to who had the book and see that it came back and so on. That was the main thing.
That's changed somewhat. You know, the philosophy hasn't
yes,
it of libraries. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later.
Right.
I wanted to bring the viewers' attention to this book called Los Altos, Portrait of a Community, which was put out a couple of years ago by a group of community activists, Los Altos Tomorrow. And Carol has written one of the articles about the library, and there's lots of photos in this book. And I really urge you, if you haven't seen it, to go check it out. I believe it's at the library,
yes,
and also it's on sale at History House.
Yes, it is.
And
I think also at the Chamber, I believe.
At the Chamber? Right. So there's some good early pictures of the library.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, to get back to what we were talking about in terms of the history of the library, now we talked a little bit about the 1936. That was during the Depression,
Yes.
and there must have been some pressure to get another facility. Was readership high then?
Yeah, during the Depression, the readership was very high, and that was a trend that happened throughout the country. People were unemployed. They didn't have money to go out and buy books or other kinds of entertainment. So, plus the fact that being unemployed meant they had a lot of time on their hands, so they wanted to read. And the library experienced a great upsurge in their circulation. And so, yeah, it was a very good time for libraries. And as I say, this is very true. Anytime you have a recession, libraries experience upsurges in circulation. So
because people don't have money for entertainment,
That's right.
and they
That's
probably
right.
don't have any discretionary money
Exactly.
for
Yes.
books
Yes.
and magazines, so
Yeah,
they come to the library.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's a good time for libraries because people are coming in, but sometimes we don't have the funding any better than they do,
Right.
so oftentimes it's hard too.
Yeah.
But,
So anyway, we have the library now on First Street and
Yes.
the powerhouse.
Yes.
And then we have the war and then the boom that really
Yes.
happened in
Yes.
Los Altos
Right.
After the war in terms of what was going on here in the valley,
Right.
changing from the rural economy to
Yes.
a more urban economy.
right.
So what was happening to the library in those days, Carol?
Well, during that period of time, it became clear that the library needed more books and more space, and so they did move from the Southern Pacific power station and rented a storefront space on State Street, and it's where the China Valley restaurant is right now.
Oh.
And so we were there for probably, I think, about 10 years. And during that period of time, there was a groundswell movement amongst the citizens to get a real library where you actually started from scratch to build a library. And so there was a movement for that. It began with a group of Girl Scouts.
Girl Scouts?
Yes, that went before the City Council in 1956. And they
Good
asked,
for them.
Yes, good for them. And they asked the City Council to study the needs of the library and see what needed to be done. And one of the remarks from one of the councilmen was something like, well, that was all very well, but they needed adults to ask them to do this, which I thought was very interesting. And the scout leader was very active herself, and so she then took it on to the AAUW, and it was the AAUW then that carried forth the desires of the Girl Scout troop to look into what the needs of the library were.
Well, that's really,
So
really,
they formed a citizens committee and decided that they wanted to build a real library.
really proactive in,
Yes,
in getting
yeah,
the library
from children
started.
on down, or on up, yeah.
So it had moved then, I think, from the powerhouse to
State Street.
To State Street.
And they had the storefront there on State Street.
And you worked on State
Yeah,
Street.
yes, I was there for 1 year, just before we moved to the
And so
new
I
library.
understand that you managed the move from
Yes, yes.
State Street to the
Yes.
Civic Center.
Yes, we moved in one weekend. We had people from the jails, actually, that came out. They were supervised by sheriff's deputies. And they came out and loaded the books from this little storefront. Actually, we had the storefront building, plus we had an annex across the street. And these gentlemen came out and loaded the books onto trucks, and we moved them all through town. And we were closed only for one weekend and opened up the following Monday.
Oh, that's
in
amazing.
The new library. Yes.
I know. Well, moving a library is always an experience. I'm a librarian as well, and I moved a library a couple of times. So
the logistics are quite exciting.
It's actually kind of fun to be able to work it all out and be able to provide service.
Yes, yes. We did a lot of that in this last remodel where we staged it in 3 different stages, so there were 3 different moves, but we kept the library open almost throughout the whole remodeling period.
So this building opened in 1960?
Yes, it was opened in 1960.
And you thought you had all the room in the world, right?
Yes. It was a wonderful, gleaming new library with all the space we could possibly imagine, and it was wonderful for its time. And it took us a number of years to outgrow it and to begin to see that we needed some other facilities. But it was the first real library built by any of the county library branches, and we were very, very proud of it.
Oh, sure.
And so was the whole community.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So then we have another really large growth spurt in the county in terms of with all of the what we understand as Silicon
Right,
Valley,
right.
and the tremendous growth that we saw in the 60s and 70s into Los Altos, and
Yes.
that must have had effects on library service again.
Yes, yes.
And then we got up to the point where it was really necessary to expand the library
Yes,
again.
yes.
So what did you actually do, Carol?
The whole world had been changing in the library field, and it became very clear that we needed better facilities that were more technology had really forced a lot of this on us. But it was good because it was time to remodel. Our building was quite dark and often actually reflected the 1960s, a lot of orange and greens and dark wood and
Earth tones.
Earth tones, yes. And it was time to look at new ways of providing service. And so the Library Commission got together, and along with the Friends of the Library, and there became a movement again to pass another bond issue. And in this case, it was a tax override, which was passed in 1990 to expand the library, and we went from 14,000 square feet to 28,000. So we added an extra 14,000 square feet.
So you
plus
actually
remodeled
doubled.
everything.
You doubled
we doubled. Plus we remodeled and changed the interior so that it's bright and shiny and new again.
So has life been wonderful ever since since the dedication, which was what, 3 years ago now?
Well, a funny thing happened on the way to opening a new library. The state legislature got into trouble with their budget, and so in their wisdom they took 50% of our funding.
50%?
Yes, of all, throughout the state, not just, they didn't just target on Santa Clara County, but of all of the county library special districts. The state took 50% of that funding, and that's a forever thing. It wasn't just for that year or the next. So we reduced our staff by 50% and went through 2 years of pretty grim library service.
That was really dramatic.
Yes, it was. And so here we had this beautiful new building, and we were having to lay off staff. And but the good thing about the beautiful new building was it allowed us to provide the service the best way possible. If we'd been in the old building without all the enhancement of technology, it would have been a lot harder.
Sure, and it would have been a lot more depressing, I would imagine, too.
Absolutely.
At least you had the nice surroundings.
Yes, we did, and plus it just was a much more efficient plant, and we were able to, I think, do a pretty good job during those 2 years. And I think the public felt that way, too, because they passed another tax override. Measure A, which was passed in 1994. And
another example of Los Altos citizens coming to the rescue of the library, I think.
That's right. Now that particular tax is countywide. The other taxes that we had passed were Los Altos and Los Altos Hills only. But this one is countywide, and by that I mean of the libraries that are in the county library system, and that's 8 different cities.
Right.
So that was passed by over 2/3 majority.
2/3?
Yes, and all the libraries in Santa Clara.
That's remarkable, really.
Yes, it really is. Better than 2/3. In fact, in Los Altos it was 73%.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really nice to know that the library has such real support here in the community. It's treasured for that reason.
Yeah.
So, anyway, things are better at the library, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's allowed us to come back to full service, and in fact, a few more hours. The North County Library Authority has encouraged us to add Friday nights. So now, for the first time since the early 1970s, we're open on Friday nights again.
So, are a lot of people using the library on Friday nights?
Friday nights is not the busiest night, but it's a good family night, so we really like it. And people come not because they have to come and do a class assignment, but they're there because they want to be there with their children, and it's a wonderful family night, so we like it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. That's good to hear.
Yes.
In terms of changes, again, I know that we talked about a little bit about the internet and the technological changes that we've all been able to experience in the last few years. Where do you think libraries are going? I hear sometimes that people say, well, there's not going to be any need for a library because, I mean, we'll be able to search the World Wide Web and find out all the information that we possibly could use. I mean, is that really true, Carol?
Well, I don't think so, but, you know, I think there's some truth in that. The World Wide Web has been described variously, but one description I like is it's like a massive, biggest ever in history history encyclopedia with no index.
Yes, of course.
And not alphabetized. And so, yes, you can get onto the internet, but we still see quite a need for librarians and people to help guide you and help you through the process of looking up that information that you need.
So librarians have really become navigators
Yes,
in this
absolutely.
information world. And
Yes.
I know Carol and I were talking a little bit before the show, and we were talking about people's expectations, which have really changed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you used to be able to say, I'll mail it to you, and a week later something would
Yes.
appear in your mailbox, but that isn't good enough anymore, is it?
No, no. Or in our case, we often didn't mail. We would say, we'll get it for you and it'll be here for you. But now people expect instantaneous answers because, well, you're online. So, but even still, I think what the technology has done for us is it's put it there, and we have to get to it and help people get to it. And also libraries have, in our county library system is a good example, have given people the access to the internet so that if you want to come onto the World Wide Web for information, that's our role, and we're able to provide that. So you can dial into our library and get onto the World Wide Web and get information. Now, we don't provide email and chat groups and things like that, but databases of information we do provide, and it's a wonderful place to, for us to be, because that's what we do.
I know, it's really exciting actually, to see how far we've come in really such a short time. Yeah. And from what you were used to managing 30 years ago, which was mostly books, now we have other formats as well. For example,
we have audio tapes, books on tape for people who commute or go on vacation or washing the windows, and they'd rather listen to a book on tape than to listen to the news or something. So we have books on tapes, we have CDs, we have audio tapes, music. We have CD-ROMs, a new collection we've just added that you can check out and take home and put in your own computer. And we have, in fact, we have a special station at the library for people who don't have CD-ROM access at home. They can use it right in the library, maybe just to see what it's all about. You read about it and you wonder, what's a CD-ROM? So it gives them a chance to use it.
Well, we haven't even really been able to scratch the surface on the terms of any of the programs that the library provides, but I know that that the library does provide a lot, and especially for children. Yes. And for older adults as well. Yes. I know that you've been really helpful in that area. And today, in the next week or so, our crew is going to be going out to the library, and we're going to be rolling in some tape about some of those programs and some of the volunteer sponsored groups that I know help out a lot in the library. Yes. So really want to thank you, Carol, for joining us this evening. It was really, really enjoyable to see you as always.
My pleasure.
Come back and visit us soon. Okay. And thank you for watching the Los Altos History Show. We'll see you next time. Let's roll that tape of our visit to the Los Altos Library. We met Carol at the recently expanded and renovated Los Altos Library. We asked her to give us an overview of the different areas of the library.
As you come into the library, you first enter into a very spacious lobby that has the circulation desk, and then as you come on in further, you will see an art wall which has been set aside for us to have art exhibits, and we change the exhibits every 2 months. We just put up a new exhibit, which is wonderful. And then also we have the children's room, and then the adult room has a large reference area, and then special areas for magazines and newspapers, audiovisual areas for such things as talking books and CDs and CD-ROMs, and of course lounge areas for people to sit and read, and many tables for them to study at tables. And then, of course, many, many stacks for them, shelves for the books themselves. And then in the children's side, we have a program room which is available for the public on the weekends. So many community organizations have meetings there on the weekend. In the library has programs, both children's and adult programs, for the public that we have in the program room. Another special area that we've been able to develop in the library is the children's room, and it's now twice the size of what we had available before. The theme is stuffed animals, and especially stuffed animals from books. So we have a wonderful, huge Curious George that the children always come up and greet when they come into the children's room. They usually give him a hug goodbye when they leave. And we have Clifford the big red dog, and we have Babar, and a number of stuffed animals that represent story characters. And then we have divided the room up into several areas. One is a preschool area for toddlers and young children, and it's a wonderful area where the children can even play a wonderful Legos table that we have. And then we have a easy reader section, which is for the children who have just started into school. And then we have a larger section for the upper grade school children. And the children also have an area right by a big picture window, which we call Cushion Mountain, and it has all kinds of colorful cushions, and children of all ages go to that area. And you'll oftentimes see a number of children lounging around reading. It's wonderful to see this. We also have programs in the children's room. We have toddler story hours, and that's twice a week. And we have preschool story hours once on Thursday morning, and again we have a bedtime story for all ages on Thursday evening. And the children come dressed in their pajamas, and it's really cute to see. We also have special programs. Occasionally we have our children's librarians are wonderful puppeteers, and they have puppet shows that they do. I have been with the library for over 30 years, and seeing the culmination of our dreams has been wonderful, because the new library is really state-of-the-art, and it's such a wonderful place, and people tell us all the time how much they enjoy the library. It's been wonderful to see the use of the library as it has increased, and seeing people of all ages and all races coming in. It really has been a culmination of a dream.